Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for spending your Sunday morning with us to honor a very special woman, one who did so much for so many. Kathleen Ritter lived 94 amazing years, and in that time, she left a lasting legacy, especially here at the University of Minnesota. So today, we want to celebrate Kathleen and the huge impact she made on Gopher athletics. My name is Laura Halderson, and I was fortunate to have known Kathleen and her husband, Bob, during my time coaching Gopher women's hockey. They were both very special people in my life, so when I was asked to serve as today's MC, of course, I said yes. I want to thank Athletic Director Mark Coyle and Executive Associate Athletic Director Julie Manning for making today possible. They realized the importance of recognizing such an influential figure in our history, and they have given us the chance to gather together and share our favorite Kathleen stories on Kathleen Ritter Day. I especially want to welcome two very, very special guests, Robert Ritter Jr. and Kathleen Ritter Crampton. I was thrilled when they told me that they would be traveling here for this event. Rob and Kathleen, please know that your parents were very dear to me and to many people in this room, and we are so glad that you could make it. We hope you feel the love and admiration that we had for your mother and father, as well as the appreciation we have for you being in attendance today. So today we can remember. We can remember the life and work of someone who made a difference in this world. We can remember stories about her and how she touched our lives. We can remember her passion, her persistence, and her feistiness. We can remember the causes she stood for and think of ways we can keep those causes alive. And we can remember how much we loved her and how much she is missed. I know that some of you didn't know Kathleen personally. My hope is that after today, you will feel like you did. I'm so happy that we have the Gopher women's gymnastics and women's hockey teams here to honor Kathleen and learn more about her. Kathleen was all about the student athletes, as you can see from the quote below the photo on today's program. Just so you know, the young gymnast she is hugging is Angela Walker. Angela graduated from the U of M in 2009 and is currently a doctor of neuroscience at the University of Texas Southwestern Medical Center in Dallas. Kathleen would be proud. This passion for the student athletes was also demonstrated by Bob and Kathleen through endowed scholarships they established here in the athletic department. I would like to ask any former or current recipients of the Kathleen C. Ritter Scholarship or the Robert and Kathleen Ritter Women's Hockey Scholarship to please stand and be recognized. We want to thank you for coming today. I would also like to thank those of you who were instrumental in the support and growth of women's athletics back in the days of the Women's Athletics Department. Former Athletics Director Chris Voles, who you will be hearing from later, had something called the Women's Athletics Advisory Council. I would like any former members of that group to also please stand and be recognized. Thank you for all you did. The last group of people I'm going to ask to stand up is very special to me personally. Before the university started a women's hockey program, there was a task force created to assist in that process and to help raise awareness and support for the team. This group was called the Women's Hockey Advisory Task Force. Regent Peggy Lucas was one of the co-chairs of this group along with Bob Ritter. Would Peggy and all of you who were a part of that instrumental group that started Gopher Women's Hockey please stand? Thank you for your work, your vision, and your belief in creating such a wonderful program. So here's what we're going to do today. I'm going to give you an overview of the program, and then we'll try to move efficiently through it. At the end of the event, we will have a couple golf carts available to shuttle those of you going to the volleyball game, which begins at noon. Everyone else is welcome to stick around and visit if you want. The soccer team plays today at 1 p.m. on the St. Paul campus. Unfortunately, our golf carts will not be making that trip, so you'll need to provide your own transportation if you plan to attend. Women's hockey faces Team Korea at 2 p.m., and there will be a social in the Ritter Arena Club Room beginning at 1 o'clock. Coach Frost will share some remarks there at about 1:15. There will also be a special ceremonial puck drop with Regent Lewis and Kathleen Ritter Crampton right before the game. You are all invited, and we hope you can make it. We will have the golf carts available for hockey shuttles beginning around 12:30. Now, back to the agenda of the program. It will begin with Brian Burnett, the university's Senior Vice President for Finance and Operations. I will tell you a little bit more about Brian in a moment. He will be followed by a short tribute video about Kathleen. I'm telling you this because I'm not going to be up here after everything, just so you know. After the video, Rob Ritter Jr. will come up to say a few words on behalf of the Ritter family. Then you will hear from two of Kathleen's closest friends and fellow Gopher supporters, Julianne Bai and Deborah Olson, who will come up together and share their thoughts on Kathleen. I mentioned Chris Voles earlier. Chris was unable to attend today's brunch, but she was kind enough to send along a video message that I think you will enjoy. This video will immediately follow Julianne and Deborah. I will be back up to introduce our current athletic director, Mark Coyle, before he speaks, and then we'll wrap things up with the playing and singing of the Minnesota Rouser. So, without further ado, I would like to introduce Brian Burnett. Brian is currently the Senior Vice President for Finance and Operations here at the University of Minnesota, and he is speaking on behalf of the President, who sends his best and wishes he could be here. Fittingly, Brian's daughter, Tori, is a senior captain on the Gopher soccer team. So I think we know where he will be at 1 o'clock p.m. Please give a warm welcome to Brian Burnett.
Good morning, everyone. And thank you, Laura. It is never easy, as our softball players would probably tell you, or our baseball players would tell you, to be a pinch hitter. But you should know that I feel very passionately about the role that Kathleen Ritter played in the promotion of women's sports on this campus. I never had the honor of meeting Miss Ritter, but I have had the honor of seeing up close and personally the value and quality of Gopher women's athletics. As Laura said, our daughter Tori is a senior captain on the Gopher women's soccer team. And I'll tell you that a big piece of why she chose the University of Minnesota when she had many choices across the country. She grew up in Colorado Springs, Colorado, my hometown, and it was really getting a call from Coach Stephanie Golan soon after she came here from West Point. And it was probably the thing that started it most was Elizabeth Lyle Robbie Stadium, and just showing up and seeing a first-class facility. And then it didn't hurt that they beat Bowling Green that night 7-0 on our unofficial visit. And then we went down the road and looked at Iowa State. We went over to Iowa, but ELR was the standard bearer for her and the program. And to the Robbie family and to the Ritter family and to all the families who have invested in women's sports, there's a reason she chose this fantastic university to continue her education. She wanted to go to a place, candidly, where she could compete for a major college championship. And last year, not only did they win and co-win the Big Ten regular season title, but they got to host the Big Ten tournament here at Elizabeth Lyle Robbie Stadium, and in thrilling fashion, as some of you in the room were there, won the Big Ten women's soccer championship. It was just a phenomenal time. So you all in the room help dreams come true. I stand here as a proud father telling you, you help young women's dreams come true, because that's exactly what happened for Tori last year, and they continue to fight here in her senior year and defend their championship. Which leads us back to Kathleen Ritter, and while we've all gathered here today to honor her and her legacy, it's more than a building or a field or a pitch or scholarships, which you'll hear about in just a minute in this video tribute for her. Yes, her generosity was extraordinary and enduring, but it was her fierce commitment to excellence that has helped to fuel a nation-leading, even unique culture around women's athletics here at the university. Just look at the quality of our volleyball, our soccer team, softball, gymnastics, and ice hockey teams, to name a few. And this follows successes over the years of our basketball, cross-country, golf, rowing, swimming and diving, tennis, and track and field athletes. And of course, we want to maintain that quality. And that's why we launched the Women's Sports Campaign this past summer with a goal to raise $10 million over 3 years, with the goal to assist our head coaches to bolster their enhancement fund. This fund allows coaches the autonomy to access support for things that are not usually covered in their operating budgets. For example, international trips for our teams, spring training in Florida for our softball team, which is kind of important in Minnesota. Prior to classes starting in January, it's a good time to get some reps in. And new technology for our rowers are among the priorities we'd like to fund with this. The fact is, week in and week out, Gopher women student athletes are winning on and off the field of competition, as you heard from Laura, because of the support of our fans and generous friends like you that have gathered here today. I'm guessing that even the cheers and encouragement of Kathleen Ritter echo to this day throughout our arenas and stadiums. So on behalf of President Kaler and our Board of Regents, I want to say thank you to Kathleen Ritter and the Ritter family from Torrey and from all of the future, present, and past Gopher women's student athletes. And with that, here's a video tribute to Kathleen Ritter. Thank you.
The University of Minnesota lost one of its most generous and ardent supporters of women's athletics when Kathleen Ritter passed away on April 3, 2017, at the age of 94. Ritter was a lifelong advocate of equal rights for women and active volunteer, championing various social causes throughout her entire life.
And I turned to the women on my left and said to her, "When do the women or the girls play basketball?" Oh, and she said, "They have no sports like that." I said, "They don't?" And she said, "No." I said, "Where I came from, I played basketball."
At the University of Minnesota, she and her husband Robert certainly left their mark. Through their tireless work and generous financial support, they were instrumental in the building of Ritter Arena, the country's first collegiate arena dedicated to women's hockey. Kathleen's legacy also lives on through the Kathleen C. Ritter Scholarship, which she established in 1983. It's awarded annually to 3 female student athletes pursuing careers in medicine, science, or math. Kathleen and her husband also created the Kathleen C. and Robert B. Ritter Scholarship for women's hockey in 1998. That's awarded each year to a Gopher women's hockey student athlete who maintains high academic standards and contributes to the program's success, both on and off the ice. The University of Minnesota and Gopher Women's Hockey wish to express their heartfelt thanks to Kathleen and the entire Ritter family for their tremendous support and generosity over the past 35 years. Kathleen's passion, tenacity, and commitment to women's athletics at the University of Minnesota has been unparalleled, and she will be greatly missed.
You know, you really shouldn't follow a video of your mother. Well, I'm going to tell a story because I've actually seen some of that video. Why? Because Kathleen Ritter's granddaughter, who lives in the Czech Republic, sent it to all of our family within 10 minutes of you guys putting it on your website. It shows how small the world is. On behalf of the siblings, my 2 brothers, Peter and Christopher, who are not here, my sister Kathleen, who you will see drop the puck. She's been practicing all week. I would like to thank the university for this honor for Mother. And to the administration, thank you for having it. And to mothers, I've used posse, mafia, group, clutch, coven, whatever you may all be, you were superb. I'd like to say a quick thank you to the hockey players, because I sat next to Murray Williamson at Walter Bush's funeral and mentioned Mother had pneumonia. And within 4 days arrived a get well card. The last time I had brunch at the University of Minnesota was in 1961 at the Newman Center. Mother was still sort of okay with the Catholic Church. In anticipation of a Big Ten football game. Those out there may not know, the Gophers were good. They were led by Sandy Stevens, the first African-American, all-American quarterback to play in Division I in the United States. He was here at the University of Minnesota. You were way, way in the forefront. Now I got to tell you a little story. John Mariucci. Now you say, what does John have to do with this? He used to say that he was responsible for Sandy Stevens. He was the hockey coach. You know, the arena that's next to the women, you know, you got Ritter, you got Mariucci. And as I was preparing for this, I said, you know, I'm going to check it. And of course, when I grew up, I didn't need Google. I had my father. So I Googled it. And by God, John Mariucci did help recruit Sandy Stevens. So he took credit and he was right. Mother would be so proud today. First off, she would rather be here. And then the rest of you wouldn't be speaking. The original time for the brunch was changed. I had to change my plane reservation because the volleyball team was going to be on ESPN. In 1960, no woman was ever, first off, ESPN wasn't around, but ABC, there was no women on. Today, they change things because you're going to be on. Do you know that there's what's called a roadblock right now? At 1 o'clock across all the sports networks, there is only women's athletics. Now, just so you know, the roadblock is a cable television term for when you are watching cable and all of a sudden a commercial comes on and you start switching and every one of them has the exact same commercial on. They used to sell them. They were called roadblocks. We've come a long way, but as everybody has already mentioned, Mother would not be happy. She would want to go further. Mother had many causes, but one unifying one was that the women's right to equal opportunity, space, and consideration in all situations. How did she get here? Mother grew up in New York, upper middle class family, until the Depression of 1929. A lot of what I'm telling you now, we sort of learned after Mother passed away. When her circumstances changed dramatically. You saw the picture of the girls' basketball team. Well, Mother was a ringer. She went to a school that, on scholarship, because her father had leukemia, her mother went to work in a dress shop, and she was on scholarship, and to pay the freight, she played basketball. She was good. I never saw her shoot a ball ever again. But Mother did that, you know. She'd take up a sport, she'd conquer it, and move on. She met my father when she was a sophomore at Smith College. They married. They went to Duluth, Minnesota, where Daddy started in the family business of newspapers and TV stations. Mother had a child and went back to school. Detroit Duluth State Teachers College. That's where she started on her degree because she didn't have it. She left as a sophomore. She wasn't going to have an MRS. They had 4 children, mentioned them already, and then Mother became the whirling dervish of causes and issues, and it became the permanent and paramount part of her life. She had the perfect partner, my father. Bob to you, Dad to me, lots of other names, but they were a perfect match for what they did. I'm just talking about their endeavors in terms of the projects and causes. Daddy had tact, had patience, had beguiling charm, and was lucky enough to have some money. Mother had purpose, absolute conviction of her convictions, and a driving need to change women's opportunities, which required money. A perfect match. And they believed in the tradition of service and commitment to the community. Mother loved making sure sports were being played. She was a lousy person to watch it. When the hockey team first started doing well, I was called in because I was the technical son, and we got the pod we did the dial-in for the first big game. Mother couldn't be there, and I got it up on the screen, and it's on this small computer, and you can see it, and and I said, Mom, sit down. She said, no. You watch, you tell me how they're doing, I'm going to go read a book. Because what was important to her was they were playing. Not what the score was, she cared, but that they were competing, that they were out there. Ice hockey. Mother never played, Daddy never played. But they loved it for 2 absolutely different reasons. To Daddy, it was a sport in need of a competent administrator. He managed 2 Olympic teams and was one of the founders of the Minnesota and USA Hockey Associations. For Mother, a sport for young women to excel at the rink, learn teamwork, sportsmanship, campus recognition, build their resumes, be able to network after college, enhance their careers, and even better, they do it in Minnesota where there's a hockey tradition. How many of the hockey players have an uncle, father, mother who played college athletics? And obviously the gymnasts too. See, it's in the genes. But she wanted you to have the opportunity, and I'm going to misbehave a little, that the men had for 100 years. Women used to go to college. They were 50% of the student body. The men were 50% of the student body, but the men got 100% of the money for sports. She was outraged by that. Ritter Arena was the culmination of their dream. They were the major donors. They worked with all the wonderful people here to make it possible. They fought for it. And I always loved my father when he had a recalcitrant male hockey person who said, now, let me just tell you that if we build this rink, the men's Gopher team will be able to come over and practice on the small rink. So when we go to those frigging small arenas at Duluth, and we will be able to be better prepared. Brilliant. Mother, when she was towards the end, we spoke about motivation. And she said to me, I remember something you told me when you were 12. Now, I have to tell you, I can't remember anything I said when I was 12. But then she told me that I had come home from a hockey game, and on the way home, we had stopped to play growing up, we played outdoors, totally. And we had stopped at a rink that someone had in their backyard, and we had played shinny hockey for half an hour. And I came home, and I said, Mom, the best player on the rink was a girl. And Mother said, I was furious. Because that girl, brothers, 4 of them, all played college hockey. 2 of them played one played on an Olympic team, one played on a national team. And the daughter was superb and never, ever got to play. I had no idea my mother remembered it. Finally, scholarships. They are the one way to make a difference. And Mother was very generous here. She did other ones. Because she felt that young ladies should be honored, number 1, for getting one, and then number 2, to perform, to get out there and perform. But she also felt that it came with a responsibility. That when you're done, that you give, if you can't give money, give time. Go to a call center, help with raising. Be a mentor. Be a cheerleader. Because there must be a continuation. And my mother, in her last month, funded a scholarship to the school you saw because she was paying her debt. So on behalf of the family, this is worse than the funeral. Thank you for having us. My mother, my father would be so thrilled to see this mixture, all honoring something that they adored doing. Thank you very much.
I know what that feeling feels like too. Thank you for your warm remembrances. And your mother will always, and father, will be in our hearts and in our souls. And they've changed so many lives and will continue to. And I think that's what they wanted, and they've done it. As you said, I'm Julianne By, and Kathleen Ritter is my champion, is my mentor, is my friend. I first met Kathleen in 1979, a very cold January Saturday at the YWCA. It was the Minnesota Women's Political Caucus, and the women were gathering to figure out what the agenda would be to work with the legislator, as Phyllis Kahn is here, on advancing women's issues. And there were wonderful women in that room, but one stood out. It was Kathleen. And as I rode the bus home that day, I found my hero, my champion. And I called my dad, who was also my political advisor. I said, Dad, I found my champion. It's Kathleen Ritter. There was a pause. We were good friends and admired her greatly. They said, you have set a very high standard for yourself. And I said, I want to be Kathleen when I grow up. And I can still say today, I want to be Kathleen when I grow up. And then through the course of the years, I did have that chance to interact with the Metropolitan Council through a formation of the women winning, and then many other things. But again, it was through the athletics that we grew that bond. In 1999, when I joined the advisory committee and working on ice hockey, our passion, and being a Duluthian, you had no choice but to support ice hockey, right? Along that way. So it was, I brought a special little prop. It's one of my favorite memories. It happened, this is 1920, excuse me, 1920. My notes are somewhere, so this is truly babbling next to Marie Ainsley. It's 2000, their first of 7 championships. I had the fortune, I know Lori Gilday's here, we were out winning when we won. That evening, Kara Spoltz said, well, it's 10:30. Can we call Kathleen? I said, wake her up. They were up. They'd listened somehow to the game. They were aware and said, we want you to hear something. We were at the Hard Rock Cafe, and the team was coming in to the chant of We Are the Champions, blaring over that. They reserved the place. And at that time, people, as Deborah was there too, we could go and meet the people when they came in. You could get to the gate. And they wanted to find the time, and they were at the gate, and Chris Schultz was a captain, and she was a captain her freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior year, and came off, and first people were to present the trophy. And I think this epitomizes what it was about, the partnership of 2 wonderful people who handprint footprints are everywhere, but quietly we don't know that. They were there because part of it was they were doing it for that next generation, but they wanted that next generation to work with them and come forward. So that baton, that seamless transition, because that was in the advisory council was, I sat with Kathleen, but I was an equal partner with her. I think Deborah would say the same thing, that we was. She wanted us there, and it was always her concern of where we go. And I have to, one sidebar was quite great joy for all of us, that the losing UMD Bulldogs were on the plane too. And as we're joyfully going through this, they had to parade past this wonderful camaraderie of people with that part, that back and forth where it is. And it was also with, as a mentor, when it came time to do my scholarship, I went to Kathleen to ask her advice. And it was 1983 when she started that scholarship. The foundation was not that happy about maybe designated solely to a gender, let alone a gender in science, math, and medicine in that area. And some of my most joyful times, too, later in life, was those phone calls, and I think many of us have been those recipients of the phone calls. No voicemail. It was on caller ID. You knew you had to return it. There was going to be some directive, and thank you, Ann Barkulu, for your clipping service, because that usually sent her off on a round of phone calls, back and forth with that. But I always try to remember to give her an update on what the wonderful women in the back of the room are doing. And one time I had a chance to tell her, Becky Cordham, a hockey player who had Kathleen's scholarship, I said, she's been accepted to medical school at the University of Minnesota. There was a pause. I said, Kathleen, are you there? And she said, I could just see her, hear her on the phone. I have to use the word, she was giddy. Oh, I'm so happy. I'm sure she was shaking her fist back and forth, and the phone kind of went in and out, so I was that part of it. And it was, but I did along the line that I was able to share those accomplishments of the women that had those recipients of those scholarships of what they've done. And it is to celebrate Kathleen. Let's continue that legacy of creating opportunities for women to be the best that they can be. Because certainly she was the best of the best, and we are better because she was in our lives.
I'm obviously the other half of this pair, so I must be Deborah Olson. I don't like following Robert and Julianne, and even Brian, who I'm not sure he's still here, but I want to thank for his wonderful mention of the soccer stadium and the family. My mother and Kathleen Ritter were exactly the same age. They were bookends in October of 1922. I was also privileged to work with Kathleen for years. I got involved with women's athletics in probably 1991, and very early on, Kathleen literally took me under her wing. After one of the first luncheons when we were organizing for something, we walked out, she put her hands on her arm around my shoulder and started telling me what I was going to do. I was already involved in a lot of things, and she and I continued to partner and work with, as was mentioned, several groups, the Advisory Council, the Ice Hockey Task Force, all kinds of things that we worked on together. I could go on, but I would be very repetitive, but there are a few important things. I sat at the legislature for hours and hours and hours helping get funding for the hockey rink, which was just a joy. I was usually with only one of them, Kathleen or Rob, and we were sitting endless hours waiting, twiddling our thumbs, waiting for conference committees, and they were just delightful, and their dedication to it was amazing. At the end of the second session, when we got the last $3 million, we were in the final conference committee bill, and a state senator walked over to us and said, "Now you ladies can go home and bake cookies." I grabbed Kathleen's arm and said quietly, "It's not done yet." I was so afraid that she would say something to him, and he'd been a great supporter. And as I said, this was the conference committee bill. It still had to be signed, sealed, delivered, as they say. And I was just concerned that Kathleen might be Kathleen. During that same time, a reporter for the Minnesota Daily asked a question that led one of our non-supporters to go off on, what is the need for this and whatever. So at the end of that, Kathleen heard some of this. She went over to the reporter and started telling him what she thought of his question. And I waited till she left, and I said to him, "Mrs. Ritter is very, very passionate about this. I hope you'll take that into consideration in what you write." As I say, I could go on and on telling stories about Kathleen, but there are a couple of other interesting things I want to say. First of all, when Laura Halderson was up there, I don't know if everyone knows this, but when Laura first met them, she named her first dog Ritter. We all thought that was terrific. What a tribute. Rob mentioned something about tact with his father, which I knew when he was saying perhaps he had some features that his mother didn't. I realized that was one of the things that bonded Kathleen and I. My sister one time defended me to her daughter about something I'd said, and I said, "Diane, that's wonderful, but your daughter's right. There was no tact in what I said." So perhaps Kathleen and I bonded over the fact that we had similar personalities and similar things that we worked on. Kathleen gave her vision, her time, her passion, her voice, and her money in so many areas. The facilities we've talked about, the renovation of Mariucci originally when it was turned into the sports pavilion, which was the home of women's athletics at the time. Then the funding, the building of Ritter Arena and the tennis center, which we all worked so hard on for several years. The scholarships that have been mentioned so many times. And then continuing funding. She was always advocating and questioning, how many staff does this team have? How many staff does that team have? Why doesn't the women's basketballs match the men's basketball program? What are they getting for recruiting budgets? What are they getting for travel budgets? She just knew it all and didn't settle just because we had successes in one area. She didn't settle and just like, okay, what else? As Rob indicated, what were we doing for everyone all the time? Why isn't it the same? And that was something that I think we all in this room admire and all need to carry on with us. The thing that was most important going forward, I think, is not just paying tribute to her in what she did, but paying tribute to her in what she would want us to do. That is something that Julianne and Rob mentioned, but it cannot be stated enough. We have made huge strides, and that was with the help of Kathleen, Marilyn Tick O'Brien, who was another one that I called the founding godmothers. They were all here when I got started, and they were here at a much more critical time. They were here when there was virtually nothing. I mean, there was a women's department. Title IX had been passed probably 10 years more before, but you really saw the progress in the 80s, and it was because of Kathleen and Marilyn and women like her. I'm the next generation. Kathleen, almost every time I talked to her till the day she died, asked me, "Now, Deborah, who have you brought in?" She kept tasking us with bringing in the next generation, making sure we do not give up, making sure that we continue to make progress, making sure that we continue with this legacy that she and Bob and so many people brought to us. And I cannot say anything better about Kathleen Ritter than that I will promise to follow that legacy, to do all those things. I have a list from the last few conversations that I had with her. I know the things we were doing. I cherished all the times I worked with her and all that we've accomplished. I cherished the meals we shared, all the sporting events we went to. Kathleen was just somebody that was unbelievable if you didn't know her, as far as what she could do and how she did it. I will take to heart all her comments and direction. I promised her I'd carry on. We'll continue to do the good work. We'll be as vigilant as she was, as active as she was. We'll continue forward holding up those standards she set. It's impossible to measure and explain that impact, but I think we all need to do everything we possibly can to carry it on. Kathleen, your voice will be forever in my head, your spirit and tenacity in my soul, and your love and sport in my heart. I told you many times I'll carry on your work, and I will. And any student athlete alum who is here and wants to continue with this, just know that we all need to keep connected and we all need to keep working. Thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of this wonderful celebration. Video from Chris is on now, and we'll ask everybody to be quiet. The volume on it is not quite as good as it was for some of the other things, so if you need to move up and to listen to it, go ahead.
I'm honored to have been asked to help with the celebration of the life of Kathleen Ritter. As the University of Minnesota's Women's Athletics Director from 1988 to 2002, I was the most fortunate athletics director in the whole nation, for I had the support, the passion, the commitment, and the inspiration of the whirlwind Wonder Woman, Kathleen Ritter. Now, for those of you who weren't fortunate enough to know her, you missed someone special. She was incredibly feisty and relentless, interesting, a lifelong learner, and a most generous feminist. Now, for those of you who did know her, I know you join me in expressing our gratitude for a life well lived, for her resources of time, talent, and funding generously shared, and fairness and equality fiercely advocated. Now today, the U celebrates Kathleen. I think that every Minnesota girl and woman justifiably could celebrate Kathleen every single day based on her contributions and the difference she made. I do. Thank you, Kathleen, and go Gophers.
Okay. It is now my pleasure to introduce the current Gopher Athletics Director, Mark Coyle. Mark has done a great job since he arrived in May of 2016. You may remember that he was also the Director of Marketing here from 2001 to 2005, so he has firsthand awareness of Kathleen's legacy and impact. We're certainly glad he could be here today. Please welcome Gopher Athletic Director, Mark Coyle.
First off, I think we owe Coach Housen, Laura Housen, a round of applause for everything she's done to put this event together. So thank you, Laura, for that. You know, as you have an opportunity to watch what has occurred this morning, a word that comes to mind is humility. You talk about someone who served and gived. And if you forgive me, I would like to talk to our student athletes in the back of the room. We talk all the time that we want to be defined by our actions. And we talk, that's how people remember us. You talk about a lady, a family, the impact that they've had on this institution, the impact they'll have on this institution from years to come. That's a model. That's somebody all of us in this room can follow and we can emulate. You know, a great part of my job is we're in education. And I understand the wins and the losses are important. But please don't ever lose sight of trailblazers, of people who had the courage, the wisdom and the kindness in their heart to make a difference. And there's no doubt what Kathleen Ritter, her husband, their family, what they have done to this great institution. So what a wonderful celebration. Promise me, our students, and all of you, that we will never forget this tremendous legacy. And I promise the family, we will always celebrate it. We will always be proud of our connection with your family, and we will always make you proud. So with that, I'd like to invite both of you to come up here, and Julie Manning, we have a couple of gifts we'd like to give you. Let me start with this. So the first gift, not knowing you well, I imagine you don't sit a lot, but this is a seat cushion that was signed by the team in the inaugural game in Ritter Arena. So we'd like to present you with this. And then this next item is, of course, a picture of your mother that we obviously cherish, and we hope you cherish it too. So thank you for everything.
Thank you, thank you, thank you,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, oh yeah. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, thank you. So at this time, we would like Coach Hansen, who is a recipient of the Ritter Scholarship, and our women's hockey team, we'd like you guys to stand up, and you are going to lead us in the rouser. So we'll have you go back there. So, and volleyball started, so I know some people are going to go over to volleyball, so I kept my remarks brief. And then we've got soccer at 1, women's hockey at 2, the Lynx at 2:30. What a great day for women's athletics on this great campus. So, student athletes, get the rouser going. Minnesota. Yay! Gophers.